Ukraine waited for Russia to blink, then erase the depot from within in under 9 seconds.
At 7 in the morning, the Tikhoret corridor burned under the sharp daylight, revealing the largest war stockpile Russia had built in decades. 1,900 tons of ammunition, 17,800 combat drones worth $420 million, and 2.5 million gallons of propellant sealed beneath 30 feet of reinforced concrete, wrapped in 6 layers of S-400 defenses valued at over $1 billion. To Moscow, it was untouchable. To Ukraine, it was just background noise from an overconfident empire. 12 Ukrainian operators drifted across the wetlands on $12,000 nanocarbon rafts, carrying $198,000 javelins, pairs of $4,000 FPVs, and fiber optic lines pushing 12 gigabits per second immune to every jammer Russia owned. Then the opening strike arrived. A $210,000 decoy drone skimmed the water, glittering in the morning Sunday. Russia answered exactly as expected. A $3.2 million S-400 missile tore into the sky and erased the target. A flash erupted across the daylight and they thought the threat was over. Before this operation unfolds, tell us your location in the comments. It helps us understand how the world is following this war. As the smoke from the explosion thinned in the midday light, Russian radar suddenly lit up with dozens of false contacts, phantom echoes crafted by a $9,000 Ukrainian Mimic AI drone. On the screens, the signals flickered like shards of sunlight bouncing off metal. Believing a larger strike was incoming, Russia deployed a Spetsnaz patrol into the reeds. The first clash came fast. Under the harsh glare of the sun, Spetsnaz operators swept the tall grass only for Ukraine to detonate a $1,500 FPV decoy in the water, blasting up a white curtain that broke their formation. Startled, Russian troops opened fire with $3,500 PKM bursts, muzzle flashes sparkling in the daylight, but none of it touched the real operation. This was only the first layer of the trap. If you follow this conflict, hit like. Comment 1 for Ukraine, 2 if you stand for peace, 3 if you're not into this news. Beneath the harsh midday sun, Ukraine quietly planted 12 $600 signal beacons across the marsh, each one buried just deep enough for the mud to disguise it. When sunlight hit the surface, the reflections looked like harmless flecks of mineral shimmer, nothing that would draw suspicion from a patrol. Yet together, those beacons formed a mirrored lattice of false coordinates, a phantom grid designed to mislead every Russian sensor pointed toward the corridor. The second confrontation arrived by accident. A Spetsnaz operator spotted a faint glint near the waterline, a single fiber optic strand catching the sun like a thread of glass. He crouched, reaching for it, and that was all Ukraine needed. A submerged FPV charge, only $800, detonated with a concussive thump, throwing up a wall of spray that scrambled Russian radios into static. Startled and half-blind, the unit fired a $2,000 white phosphorus flare that burned brilliantly against the daylight, but revealed nothing. While Russian troops stumbled through noise, glare, and confusion, Ukraine said nothing. No radio, no footsteps. No movement beyond the reeds. All the data they needed, heat signatures, response times, sensor drift, was already racing along a fiber line thinner than a human hair. Realizing their ground patrols were losing the thread, Russia escalated. And $100,000 Orlan 10 lifted into the bright afternoon sky, its composite wings flashing as it climbed. The plan was simple. Let the sun expose what the mud and reeds had been hiding. From 2,000 feet up, the Orlan scanned for irregular reflections, an angle too clean, a ripple too deliberate, any clue that might reveal where the Ukrainians were threading their invisible network. It found something, but Ukraine found it first. 2 FPV drones, each only $3,800, ripped out of the reeds, slicing across the sunlight like twin black strokes painted onto the sky. They stayed low, hugging the glare, using the Orlan's own shadow to blind its sensors. By the time the Russian pilot registered the anomaly, the drones were already on top of him. The impact shattered the rotor assembly in a burst of glittering fragments, and the Orlan spiraled downward, crashing into the marsh with the splash swallowed instantly by the reeds. At that moment, Russia lost its only reliable eye in the sky, and for the first time, command understood the real shape of the battle. Ukraine wasn't fighting for the air. Ukraine was rewriting the ground beneath it. With the skies blinded and the marsh masking every movement, the 12 Ukrainian operators split into their final formation. They pulled their fiber optic lines into a wide, spoke-shaped web encircling the depot, each strand hidden beneath sun-bleached reeds and dry mud. In the shade of a crooked tree line, 3 Javelin launchers were set into position, their optics angled upward but their operators perfectly still. 6 FPV drones lay dormant under patches of scorched grass, their carbon shells disguised as nothing more than debris from last season's drought. By midday, the false beacons had finished their work. The S-400 network, overwhelmed by conflicting echoes, now saw threats in every direction: phantom signatures, mirrored returns, ghost coordinates. Russia responded exactly as Ukraine intended. Another wave of multi-million-dollar missiles launched into the empty horizon, detonating against targets that never existed. Every wasted shot tightened the trap. The moment the last Russian missile vanished into the haze, the real strike began. 4 FPV drones burst from the reeds, their engines a low, predatory hum as they locked onto the $40 million S-400 radar cluster. In the blinding midday sun, they looked like streaks of ink cutting across white paper. Then, impact. A flash erupted so violently bright it washed the tree line into pure white, turning the radar's carbon frame into molten lattice in seconds. Operators inside the bunker didn't even have time to curse, their screens went dark all at once. Above the firestorm, 3 javelins arced upward, drawing thin blue crescents across the sky before diving each one a precision-guided blade, worth its weight 100 times over. They pierced the underground depot like 3 knives hammered into stone. A heartbeat later, 1,900 tons of munitions ignited. The ground didn't just shake, it heaved like a living thing. A shockwave rolled across the corridor, flattening reeds, blinding every Russian reconnaissance drone, and swallowing the horizon in a wall of white fire. The S-400 system, once the pride of Russia's southern flank, went completely silent. In a single midday detonation, the fortress became a void. The aftermath hit Russia harder than the explosion itself. Within minutes, 460 artillery pieces across the southern front fell silent, their targeting links severed. More than 130 fuel trucks froze on sun-baked highways, engines idling without orders. 63% of the logistics network collapsed under cascading failures, and drone operations plunged from 500 sorties a day to barely 50. Command posts, EW nodes, and radar stations lost contact with each other, leaving the entire southern flank effectively blind. Ukraine didn't need to advance. The battlefield had already fallen apart on its own. In Belgorod, families fled sun-shaken homes, carrying children wrapped against the heat. In Kharkiv, daylight finally felt quiet. On both sides of the border, medics pulled civilians from scorched ground, ignoring flags entirely. And as sunlight poured into the 160-meter crater, one question remained: who pays for a war run by algorithms?